Hi, I'm Tim Burgess and welcome to another episode of Tim's Listening Party on Absolute Radio. This episode I'm joined by Robert Smith from The Cure to talk about the band's brand new 14th album, Songs of a Lost World. It was 2 years ago yesterday that you did a Twitter listening party. I believe...
Was it? 2 years ago?
Yeah,
I remember
for
doing
Wish.
that. I came off stage in Amsterdam, but I always remember like there was I did it in the dressing room after the show.
Yeah.
I was really knackered, and they were completely everyone around me was totally out of it, and I was thinking I've got to do this, I've got to take it seriously. And so I'd prepared that afternoon. I'd written a whole load of stuff out, thinking this is probably what I'm going to be asked. This is what I think. Yeah. So I thought, well, I'll listen to it. So I listened to the album and I wrote down what I thought of it. So I had it there. And one of my nephews was there, and he was like, Uncle Rob, you're so... How did you think to do that? He's like, why is Uncle Robert? But I remember it was an unusual thing to do. It was strange, a strange thing to do. Actually,
it's the third most replayed.
The third? Who the hell? Don't tell me Kylie.
No, no. You'll be surprised, but
Iron Maiden
twice.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
1 and 2, and then 4 is McCartney.
Simon, our bass player, we went to see Iron Maiden 2 weeks ago in Boston. He sent me a message saying, I'm hanging out with Iron Maiden. They think we're really cool.
I think Iron Maiden are really cool. I didn't know anything about them. I think it did like 100,000 listens overnight or something, and just in South America.
Yeah.
Mad. But anyway.
Simon wears an Iron Maiden shirt on every Cure show pretty much, I think. And mainly because of my face just before we're about to go on.
So, I mean, I usually share on Twitter my favourite album of the year, and nobody asks me to do it. And I ask everyone what theirs was. And so it counts as a fully accountable survey, and you'd be glad to know that most people have said that, well, most people who follow me on Twitter agreed that Songs of a Lost World is the best album of 2024.
Blimey.
Yeah.
I don't know. I am actually struggling a little bit to respond to the amount of love that the band and the album's getting. We're kind of used to it at a lower level. I mean, when we play shows, stuff like there's an engagement with the audience, and it's always really, live shows are always really, really good. But this is kind of different. It's these people who are suddenly saying, this is such a great thing, and I'm just not used to it. If I'm honest, I'm not really used to. I know people around me are very bad at taking compliments, and I sometimes lose my temper. I'm like, just take the compliment.
Yeah.
And I'm finding myself in that awkward position where I'm find it very difficult to take the compliment, because I'm thinking, when it was done and it was finished, and I'd listened. I remember actually listening to the mastered version at home for the first time, and I'm thinking like, wow, this is exactly what I wanted.
Yeah.
But now I'm starting to think, is it really that good? It's like it's all doubts are creeping in. So it's probably good that I'm moving on to something else quick. Because but yeah, it certainly. I mean, it's not the reason it was created, but it's very gratifying to find that it's touching people in such a way. It's really good.
And on the sleeve notes, I thought it was really beautiful that you just said all those who've been with us through the last 15 years. And I just thought that was it just said so much.
Yeah, I mean, when we've been going around the world and playing music to people, there's a genuine sense of community has built up, particularly over the last 15 years. It's always been there with us. I think the band's represented something quite powerful to people. It attracts, I didn't say a certain type of person, but I think Cure fans do, there's something about Cure fans, which, I mean, every band says we've got the best fans, but I mean, Cure fans, there's something about them, that it's like, and it's a real pleasure to play music in a room with people who are Cure fans. We could talk about other bands and they've got great fans, but it's kind of different. I mean, I've been to lots of shows, and so I know what it's like to see other bands. There's a genuine sense of community, and of course it happens with other bands as well. But when you're part of it, you kind of, and it develops and people grow up with you, and particularly after this amount of time, we've still retained a lot of people who were there really, really early on. I mean, I know most of them by name, but we've also attracted an enormous audience of younger people, and it's when you get in a room with everyone and you start playing music, it's just it kind of makes sense. So I suppose when it's to do with an album, because it's been so long since we've had anything new, it's slightly different. It's slightly difficult to So I was really acknowledging everyone that's kind of like experienced everything with us, you know, in the time it's taken from the last album to this one, because I think it's the reason why we've kept going, really. I mean, I've wanted to do it, but I wouldn't be able to do it if people didn't want us to do it. So essentially, they're the reason why we're still going.
Well, let's kick off this listening party with the first track from Songs of a Lost World. It's Alone. So, Alone, first track, the first one that everyone heard. Do you think it's catchy?
It would be low down on a list of adjectives if I was describing the song to someone.
Okay.
If you hear it enough times, well, anything's catchy, isn't it? Like a beep is catchy. The one review that I read, because I still read reviews, and it's really stupid, but I sort of like, I'm interested in how people perceive it, I suppose. And I think through the medium of reviews, that's how other people are going to perceive it until they hear it themselves. And so I was thinking, so that's why I was saying, we were getting 5-star reviews. We've never, ever had 5-star reviews. So I started to read them to see what do they like about this that they haven't liked about anything else we've done. So it's always human nature. So the one bad thing, I was like, it's like he can't write tunes anymore. And I thought, it's like gone are the pop hits of like the 80s. I was thinking like, because that would sound good, wouldn't it? You know, like over alone. I mean, it's like a completely different thing. But it did make me think about you do to some degree sacrifice that kind of earwormy sort of stuff when you're doing emotional and big stuff, because it gets in the way. So it's almost not catchy because you don't want it to be too catchy, because it isn't really that kind of music. It's more, it's like asking if, this is very pretentious, but it's like asking if a really great piece of orchestral music is catchy. I mean, if you listen to it enough, all joking aside, you know how the next bit is. When I was younger, I used to listen to stuff on repeat, like on a Walkman. I used to have like the same 6 cassettes for a 3-week tour and just listen to them endlessly. So I knew the tone of the hiss at the beginning and end of the cassette. So everything on those, like it was Astral Weeks. I know every single note on it, but also there was a Gregorian chant cassette, and I knew. I didn't know what they meant because it's Latin and I don't have the benefit of that kind of education, but I used to sing along, so to me it was incredibly catchy, and like people would like, and forgetting I had earphones, so I'd be sitting there like and I'd be singing Gregorian chant. As like a lot of people think, he's so weird, but I actually thought it's like very restful, like I was engaged with it, but I'm not sure that Alone's catchy, but I think that there is certainly there's melody runs through everything The Cure does. There are very few songs that we've done which rely entirely just on kind of like noise, if you like. But I love noise music, which is weird. But I think other people do it far better than I do. So I think what we do best is that is a kind of like a gentle melody of like and harmonies and that kind of interweaving stuff. And I think in Alone, when it all comes together like it does in Alone, I think then it becomes catchy, kind of catchy. Catchy's not really the right word, but it's catchy enough.
The reason I said that is because I was in Iceland when I bought the record, and I'd heard Alone a couple of times, and Iceland has a lot of spas, right? And I was just in a spa and it was like ambient music, and I could sing the melody to Alone over this ambient music, and I thought that is the sign of a really great song. Yeah. In my head at that time, that's what I thought. I thought if I ever get to interview Robert Smith, I'm going to mention that.
Yeah, you could also say that it's like it means it's so incredibly bland that you could like sing it over background music. It's like
that's not.
No, I know what you mean. I take it in the spirit that you mean. Yeah. I'm just. It's hard to get past visualising you in a nice atmosphere, to be honest, to answer the question properly. If there's a question there, I don't know. I've forgotten.
Okay.
Do you test all new releases?
No, for a start, I've only been to Iceland twice. I've only been to Iceland twice, and it was. I wanted to go into a record shop and buy the record, and it's something that I do, and I had it, and but I'd heard Alone as the lead track. I just couldn't stop singing it in Iceland, so maybe it has some sort of connection.
Yeah, it worked because we started every show from 2022 right the way through to the end of 2023. Yeah. It was 90 plus shows. Every show we opened with Alone and we ended with Endsong. But that's kind of what you do if you've got when you have a new album out, we've always done that. We always open the show with the lead track from the album. What was weird was that the album wasn't out through that entire period. So we were actually playing, essentially just like new songs. But
did you have the whole album at this point?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I hadn't sung a convincing version of Warsong, actually, was the one I struggled with. I had like different words and it just didn't sound right, but I wanted it to be on the album. I was kind of changing things all the time, all the way through the 2022 tour, actually. We were doing things in soundcheck and I was trying to figure out if we had the right running order and stuff. And I didn't really settle on it until this year. So we were still kind of fluid when we were doing it. And we would drop songs in. We played a lot of songs that didn't make it onto this album. We played, which will probably be on the next one because they were recorded at the same time. But I knew that Alone was, it worked just straight away. Yeah. Plain Song, which is the opening track, and Disintegration, which we did at Troxy in the second set, it's the same kind of thing. It used to allow me to kind of settle into this, to take it all in and then to start, and it's almost like a preamble kind of thing. So with Alone, I wanted that build into the vocal, which became sort of like almost thematic through the album, unintentionally really. But I wanted the music to breathe before I started singing. And a lot of the initial response from people that I was playing it to, it's like, is it an instrumental? Because it would be, like 6 minutes and you still haven't sung. It's like, can't you sing a bit earlier? And I'm like, well, why? It's a 10-minute song like that. Why do I have to sing? And I think that's been informed by my love of bands like Mogwai and God is an Astronaut. Bands that are just like essentially instrumental bands, just like who don't need vocals. So I think, I need to justify why I'm singing over the top of this, because my intention is really for us to create a great piece of music that fits my words. That's always the goal. And sometimes we pull it off, not always, but when we do, it's like my happiest moment. I think that this is it. And so Alone is one of those. The words just fit with the music, and I think maybe that's it. So in that way, it's catchy because I suppose the vocal melody is kind of carrying the song, because there aren't any other strong melodies in the song, and that's true of like most of them on the album, which is why I think the review said like, I've lost the art of Brian, but I haven't.
You haven't.
Come on.
It's a beautiful opening to And Nothing Is Forever. It's emotional and beautiful, unhurried. I can't think of anything except maybe something classical that affected me so deeply.
That's very nice.
Yeah, and I'm not even a reviewer.
Yeah, when we did that one in the studio, because obviously I was playing it, and I was going to get in a string quartet to play that, and also there's another one that isn't on the album, because it's not supposed to sound like real strings, but it sort of does, because samples are so good nowadays. But you kind of know it isn't.
Yeah.
And I actually liked the idea. So in there is an Emulator 2 string sample. It's like, in fact, that's throughout the whole album. There are old samples from the 80s that we use. So I dug out all the old sort of like 8-bit and 16-bit things, and through there's at least one on each track, just to give it a bit of like, for me it was just a nod to what we've done in the past.
Well, let's hear that track we've been talking about from Songs of the Lost World. This is And Nothing Is Forever. I mean, people have said that the record is dark, and I think you've said it's depressing, but I think it's very uplifting.
I think I said that about a version of the album which isn't this version of the album.
Okay.
I think it's when I was compiling the album that I left off the most disturbing and depressing song isn't on the album.
Okay.
Because it was too much. And I think that's what, but I played what I thought was the running order of the album, which was 12 songs, and I think I was referring to that. And I played it to Mary first, to see her, gauge her reaction. And she was like, you're insane. There's no one who's going to be able to listen to that again. Listen to it once and that's it, because it's too much. It's too relentless, and it had no light on it at all. So I'm glad she said that, because it made me then think, I'd actually got too far down this road of thinking I want to make the bleakest, the most depressing. And I thought, why do I want to do that? It's like going back to the Disintegration album, which is always held up as like, this is the album that like defines the band. I thought, well, that's got like Lullaby on it and Love Song, Fascination Street. It isn't really a doom and gloom album. It's actually got like hits on it. And I thought, I didn't feel like I wanted to. I thought, I'm not compromising the album by putting like upbeat music on it just so that it isn't difficult. But I also realised that a couple of the songs, it was too long and it was too much. And I figured, like, why don't I go back to try and fit it onto a single vinyl? That then became my sort of like starting point. And I redid the whole thing. I knew the beginning song, knew the end song, and then I started to, and Fragile Thing at that point fell onto the album, because suddenly it seemed like a pop song compared to everything else in my dismal state at the time. But that's what I was referring to. I don't think the album is depressing, actually. I think it's emotional, but I don't think it's depressing. It's depressing personally for me because the themes on it are essentially about me dying. So, I mean, it's ultimately, it is quite depressing, but it's more about enjoying what time you have. I mean, it's the value of time, I think, is at the heart of the album. It's not so much like a doom and gloom, woe is me. It's more like I'm much more aware that, and it's not just me, it happens to everyone. You unless you're insane, you become more aware of like how you're spending your time. Time becomes much more valuable the less you have of it.
Nothing you can do but sing, this love is a fragile thing, this love is my everything.
Yeah, it's a bit of a dig at myself. No, I mean, it's something I've been rightly accused of as well. It's just that, because there is a certain glibness to, like, that when I've kind of played up to that sort of romantic persona in the past, I do like sometimes slightly tongue in cheek. Other times I'm seduced by it. Not for a long time, but when I was younger, it's kind of harking back to that. It was just me kind of like having a bit of a dig at myself. There's a certain, I'm not sure how I put it, there's a certain dishonesty of youth. You're not really aware of it, but you're kind of like romanticising things, and you kind of know you're doing it, but it doesn't seem to matter. But when you get older, it matters more. And so I'm thinking, like, these things, the things that I value, I don't think I valued them enough when I was younger. And it doesn't bother me because there's nothing I can do about it. But I never have regrets because it's a waste of time. But there is very little in my life that I've regretted, thankfully. But there is always that sense that, maybe if, it's just human nature. And I think I was just kind of going back and thinking, like, probably could have done better in certain ways. And that song alludes to the fact, that I haven't always, like, lived up to my own expectation.
Did you look back at, like, earlier Cure stuff before going into this record? I mean, do you ever, or you...
Only when I'm doing the remasters. And so we started those in... I think 2010, actually, just after we did the first album then. I did a flurry of them, I think, for the following sort of 2 or 3 years. I think we got right up to 2004. Am I talking about? 2004 we did it. We did Three Imaginary Boys. I finished in 2010 with Disintegration, then it all kind of slowed down because we started playing, and I just kind of lost interest a little bit in the catalogue. I was doing it really, if I'm honest, I was doing it because they sounded awful. They were mastered in such a terrible way for CD. The early albums, they never sounded right. And so I liked the opportunity that I was given to kind of make them sound better and put some of the stuff back in with them that I liked. Some of the live stuff and the demos and stuff. It was also just a way to re-engage with the past in a more positive way, rather than just like sitting and moping and listening to the glory is. It was better for me to kind of like address it and think like that, And so I got a good idea over a period of time as to some things I'm really, really proud of, and some things I think are really, really good. But there's a fair bit that I think, but we got away with it, I think. Because we were well-intentioned and we were young, and it kind of worked, and there was always another album coming around the corner. But there's enough good stuff on there for me to feel like, I can see why we're still going. And also there's enough great stuff over a sort of a 30-year period for me to think if we are going to do something new, it has to be really great. There's no point, we've got all these songs. Why would I want to bring out a bunch of songs that aren't as good? So unless I've got something to say, and that's why it took such a long time. And apart from anything else, I just didn't feel the urge to make an album. Right. And that, to me, it's crucial. It's like we could have made an album every couple of years all the way through, since the last one. But what would be the point? So I suppose my idea of making albums has always been like that they need to be driven by this sort of like this urge to create. They're not really there because you're in a band. You're in a band because that's what you need to do. It's like for too many people, it's the other way around. You kind of like, you come up with a couple of albums and you're in a band. It's like, what do we do now? You've got to make another album. I mean, we did that. If I'm honest, I think probably around the time of the Top, the band, it was just like 1984.
That's the first time I saw you.
it just kind of everything fell apart. But because I got involved in all other different projects, I didn't feel like that it mattered, and in a way that saved the band at that point. You know, Simon had left, and it was just me left with Lowell and I went off and joined the Banshees for a year or so. And when I came back to The Cure, I kind of think like I sort of missed this, and so I picked it up again. And I think if I'd just pursued it during that period, I think the band would have ended very, very shortly afterwards, because I think I would have kind of thought like the heart's gone out of it. Whereas I kind of went away and I got rid of all this like extraneous stuff that was like that I was infected with, and then I came back and I picked up where I'd left off. So
I love that period, the top.
Yeah, I look back at it with mixed feelings actually, because I wasn't in a very good physically or mentally in a very good place. But
that was the first time I saw the band, 1984, in Manchester Apollo. 17 years old.
That's
Good
funny.
times.
I just came across the tape of that recently.
Of Manchester Apollo?
Yeah, because we recorded that tour, so we did that. Did an album called Concert.
Yeah.
Which we recorded.
Black Sleeve.
Oxford, Hammersmith, and Manchester.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
You might hear me shouting.
Yeah.
Here's track number 3 on Songs of a Lost World. It's a fragile thing. So, I saw you at the Troxy, and it's incredible. The sound. Anyone would be forgiven thinking that you did the whole record live from start to finish, because I mean, the sound coming back is just like the record.
Cool. I watched it 2 nights ago for the first time.
Yeah.
I watched the stream.
Yeah.
I'm glad the album doesn't sound like that.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, there's some great bits in it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's different. There's a certain amount of tension on stage, which works in some parts, and in other parts, it's like, we're kind of teetering on the edge of thinking, I can see me trying, the songs that we've played prior to that show, there were 5 on the album that we've been playing over the last couple of years. Yeah. I know they're going to work. Everyone on stage knows they're going to work. Although the first song was a disaster because Simon was wearing some kind of slinky jacket that he'd been given.
Oh, he was kneeling down.
And his bass strap kept slipping.
Got you, yeah.
I mean, I shouldn't laugh, but I didn't know what was going on because I was just about to start singing, and I realised that he was like on his knees behind me, and I thought, like, I could see Reeves kind of like thinking,
giving him a helping hand.
I kind of like turn around and say, is everything okay? So I was kind of singing it, and it distracted me. It took me a while to get back into what we were doing, and it's really weird because you think, because there's all part of my brain was thinking like, what's happening, because but from that point on the band sort of grew into the songs. But once we hit Warsong, which was the first song that we'd never played before in front of people, suddenly everything felt different on stage. It was not in a good way. There was a real tension there, and it was like, although we'd rehearsed it, thinking like, but suddenly here we are, here's people, lights are on, and we're playing the song, and there was a real, different parts of the band react to that in different ways, and I can never predict how, and watching it back I can kind of see it. I think I'm really into it, but I think the band as a band is kind of much more concerned about getting it right.
Do you think that's because it's been filmed and recorded?
Yeah, I didn't tell him it was being filmed or streamed until the week before.
Good tactic.
Just during rehearsals, I kind of just dropped it in. It was a global live stream, and there was this horrible silence. Why would you do that? So the tension was released, and particularly in the last song, in Endsong, which is a great performance of Endsong. It's like it really kind of like it makes sense of the whole set for me. But it was good too. It was more a feeling like when we came off, there was a real sense of we got through it. Rather than when we do a great show, you kind of take the crowd with you, and you don't ever think, was it a great show? You just like you've just been part of something which you've really enjoyed. And that's the side of it which was different. It was a performance in a way that Cure shows aren't really a performance. We're not really aware, and all the festivals that we do, I mean, most of them are streamed. It's not the fact that there's cameras there or anything. It's just that we were playing songs we'd never played before. We were kind of doing something for a very specific reason, and it was a small venue for us. I mean, it's not meant to sound funny, but I mean, it's much harder to play to people that close. I've always found that. I mean, I was so happy when we started to get successful. Because I got such terrible eyesight that when I'm far enough away, I just see like an amorphous mass of people, and I feel much more comfortable. If I catch someone's eye when I'm in a smaller show, it's like, it's the end, you know. I keep thinking, oh, that's what I start thinking what they're thinking. I start seeing myself through their eyes. I think, oh God, you know, it's like it all starts to crumble. But having said that, the trade-off is that it's harder work creating an environment, you know, like a real sort of like sense of an environment in a bigger venue. It becomes more about the staging and stuff, you know. Whereas the Troxy show was, it was, you know, for us, it was like it was an intimate show. You could kind of feel the crowd. It was good, but there was an expectation there, and I think that's the other thing. There really isn't. People come to a Cure show, they kind of already know. They kind of know what it's going to be.
Yeah.
You know, I don't see much point in we're going to like spring too many surprises. We play songs that we haven't played before. We're not really going to just break, you know, have a backing singers or dancers and stuff. So people will kind of like know what they're going to get. And there's more to a Cure show than just like what we're doing on stage. I think the Troxy show was more about us. You know, this is our new songs. It was made a lot easier because the response to the album had been so great.
So great, yeah.
You know, the reviews had been, you know, I mean, you can imagine if the album had been panned, it would have been a lot harder going on stage and proving that it wasn't. It would have been a different show. As it was, there was an expectation, like, you know, every review is like, this is a wonderful piece of work. Like, and we're thinking, really? You know, we're going to go on and like, it's all going to go horribly wrong. I'm going to forget all the words and like... But yeah, it was good. It was a good night, actually. I'm glad we did it.
It's funny to have those kind of thoughts running through your mind.
I know that I'm not, I never, if it's a great show, I never think about it. That's when I know, because if I ever catch myself thinking about anything on stage, I know that I'm not there.
Yeah.
It's like when you're singing, you know, it's like you're just, I mean, the day I have to read the words is that I won't ever reach that day because I've given up. I'm singing the songs that I've written and they mean something to me, and, and that's the whole point of singing. Yeah. It's like, so I'm engaged with the song, you know, and I'm trying to present it, and I'm engaging with the audience. So when things start to go wrong, and because we haven't been on stage for a long time, you know, a year, we're really in front of people. We've done a couple of BBC sessions, it's not really the same thing. You know, what after a few dates becomes just like you just do things without even, you know, you click pedals and you don't have to look at where you are on the guitar and stuff, all that kind of thing. They're little details. Like when I was watching the stream back, I'm thinking, I'm looking all the time, you know, which I don't normally do. I'm checking, like, am I on the 5th fret? You know, is my hand waiting to go?
Was that
like,
only in the very early beginnings of the live stream, though?
Yeah. Once we got through the first set, the rest of it, it's like totally different. Yeah. The rest of it is like we've just gone off and taken some really serious drugs. We come back on, it's like everybody knows exactly what they're doing. No, it's just that first hour. Yeah. But I suppose that the trade-off is that the intensity that's there on stage with everyone trying, you know, really, really hard not to get it wrong, you know, as opposed to trying to get it right. I mean, we all know what it's supposed to be, so it's more a case of like, can you not just remember what you're playing, but remember how we did, you know, the last couple of days in rehearsal, how did we get to that point where this song became something more than just us playing the chords, you know. So a song like Warsong, you just don't, you know, it's all to do with the noise that you're making. And in rehearsal, that was the first time, the night before, we had a sound check at Troxy, and it was the first time we really made a noise, you know, with that song. Like everyone turned up, you know, and kind of wailed away. And suddenly I thought, like, this is great, you know. It's like in rehearsal, it just sounds like a series of guitar chords, but suddenly on the album you've got this sort of like dense kind of like build of just like it's sort of earth shaking kind of like my Mogwai moment. And that's what I was, you know, I was actually thinking, oh God, you know, Stuart's in the audience, like Kevin Shields is in the audience, like, so normally I say to, like, I'm saying to Reach, like, turn down, you know, and I said, you turn up.
Okay, let's hear a Cure track that they played live at the Troxy gig, which you can hear on their Songs of a Live World, Troxy London, which is out on December 13th.
This is Warsong on Absolute Radio.
That was taken from the Cure's live album, Songs of a Live World, recorded at the Troxy in London, and that album is out on December 13th, and all the royalties from the album will go to benefit War Child.
So, Robert, Warsong, Harmonium at the beginning.
Yeah.
Love a harmonium.
That was a nod to Disintegration. There's a song Disintegration called Untitled.
Yeah, the last track. Yeah,
similar kind of vibe, really. So Warsong, it didn't have a harmonium until this year. It was actually based around a guitar motif, which isn't on the finished song.
Right.
So it's kind of, that song's mutated through various iterations, and I wanted it to sound Scottish. Actually, I wanted to sound like an army coming over, like marching over, like that sort of like a kind of cinematic sort of thing. And then the problem with the harmonium is there's always a small part of me that thinks I have a cutler.
Yeah.
Which sort of undermines any sort of like grandeur that it like. So once I got past that, I thought it's nice. There is something about, I've got a harmonium at home, and it's my favourite instrument. It's always been my favourite instrument. There's always been a harmonium in our house, like when I was growing up, and it just like pedaling and just holding down, just like
And then the bass is like ferocious and affected, and who's doing this? It's like a Hendrixy kind of thing. Was that you? Is that you or is that Reeves?
That's Reeves.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I could pretend that's me, but I wouldn't get away with it for long.
Well, you could pretend for a minute.
Yeah. Letting Reeves off the leash on a couple of these songs is that actually it adds a dimension to the band, which is it's an unexpected part, and that's probably what isn't there on some of the early albums. When Paul was playing, Paul was a great guitarist, but I wouldn't really let him do what he wanted to for a long, long time, because it was at odds with what we did.
Yeah, because he was in very early. Cure, wasn't he?
In and out of the band for over a period of like 20 odd years. Because when we started out, Paul was in, before we actually changed our name to The Cure, Paul was in the band, and was like the local lead guitar hero kind of thing, and it didn't really work.
Yeah,
and also punk was against all that kind of thing, and I was I thought, unless there's a reason for it, like, please don't play a guitar solo. I think Reeves has spent so much of his career playing, particularly with Bowie, kind of stepping back, metaphorically. When Bowie opens his mouth, you're not really going to start playing lead guitar. You're not going to last very long if you do. And so it's kind of inbuilt with Reeves. And like, he looks at me, and we've developed an understanding, particularly on stage. Like, if I wanted to go a bit more, go for it, I'm just like, there's a kind of go for it look. And he's like, and he goes for it. But he understands that the band isn't about that. It's not, he's got his own kind of experimental trio where he's able to do that. He understands that the song is, like I said earlier, the song is the key. And so on Warsong, I just wanted him to kind of go a bit sort of Hendrixy and stuff. He doesn't like it when I say things like that. He's always like, because he's very, very aware of being his own. He has developed his own style. But the problem is that what people would say is Reeves' style, I think, up until he's been in The Cure for quite a long time, whereas I think I've beaten it out of him.
Right.
He's constant vibratoing, and they say, don't stop doing that. Which is a bit silly, because that's kind of what he was known for. But he's an experimental guitarist at heart. He's much more about sounds than melody and stuff. Although he can play absolutely anything, left to his own devices, he just makes noise. If he's on his own in the rehearsal room, you can hear like squealing and shrieking. It's Reeves like testing out like a much needed new pedal, because he's only got about 48 on his board. So.
Wow.
How dare I say things against Reeves? This is outrageous.
Him and Kevin with their pedals.
Yeah, because I'm there with my 6 Boss pedals that have been there for like 30 years. Can I interest you in this pedal? No, it's okay.
So that's the end of side 1. Was it always going to be the end of side 1?
Yes, it was. Warsong, Warsong was actually the trickiest song to finish of all of them, because I wanted to sort of be commenting on the parlous state of the world, but at the same time, the intention of the song was written about a relationship that I had, which was kind of soured horribly, and then was okay again, and then it soured again, and I thought, like, oh, this is like, you never really know why. It kind of used to drive me a bit crazy, and I just see it around. I see it with people around me as well, and I think, like, you can kind of see it when it's happening to other people, but you can never understand when it happens to you. So it was that. But then thankfully I kind of sort of moved it out into the world a little bit, and it was just more. It's more about, like, particularly the male desire just to fight. It just I'm now old enough. You've kind of seen it all before. It's so tragic. The sort of repeating history, all the same mistakes by the same people, just with different names. It's really wearying, and also quite worrying at times.
Yeah. Back to the album. So, Robert, Drone, Nodrone. I think when I heard it, and you just saying before that, that we didn't say that you repeat yourself, but along those lines.
I did.
You did. Okay, I knew you did.
I did.
Yeah. But I kind of thought of Head on the Door with this song.
Really?
Yeah. Side 2 specifically.
Right.
But, you know, that's not meant to be...
No, I think it's kind of like Fascination Street in my mind.
Oh, right.
It sort of occupies the same place in the album, if you like. It just, not musically, but it has like an energy to it. It's got a distorted bass line. It's kind of a bit relentless. It suddenly lifts everything up, and I think that's what I was saying earlier about my original running order didn't have that song on it either. It hadn't, because I thought it was much too poppy.
I was maybe thinking like...
You're thinking of the song that goes down, 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 da 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 da.
Maybe, yeah. Is that Sinking? Is that? Oh, no, Screw. Maybe that, but I mean, I don't know. It's just a vibe.
Yeah, well, same bass player, isn't it?
Same bass player.
Yeah. No, I mean, honestly, it was trying to get some of what you see when Simon's playing on stage, the energy that he's got, and that sort of like relentless sort of like. I wanted to get a song on the album that has that, and that's the song. Drone's the song that's got that kind of like relentlessness to it, which is just there, from beginning to end. It was the hardest song to mix of all the songs on the album, to get it actually to sound like it's a real delicate balance for it not to sound like rock.
Yeah,
with a capital R.
Yeah. But
that was good fun actually doing that live for the first time. I enjoyed that very much more than I thought I would. Warsong was more difficult, funnily enough, even though it's a much simpler song. Much more difficult to step up to the mic and sing it properly.
Okay.
But it's probably the best vocal that I did at Troxy. I think it's the best performance. And the third song, All I Ever Am, which we'll get to, was actually turned out to be the hardest one to pull off live. For a number of reasons, it's technically much harder than the others and rhythmically more difficult, and far too many notes for me to remember what I was thinking. I watched the stream and I thought I remixed it. I remixed the album set.
Yeah.
So it's coming out as on December the 13th. Actually, here you go.
Great.
For to benefit War Child. So I thought I'm not going to do it as a vanity project. I'll do it and some good will come of it. So. Yeah, I wanted it to be just like exist physically. I mean, it's staying up on Space Tube for however long, I don't know. Which has gone down really well, the fact that we did that and did it for nothing. People can't believe that there's no adverts on it. And
it's great.
I mean, it's like driving the point home that not everything has to be monetized, and it still works. It's now a couple of million people watch it and feel good about having watched it. It's like, and how can I not feel happy about it?
Let's hear the fifth song on the album, Drone, Nodrone. Robert, up next is I Can Never Say Goodbye.
Yeah, that's the most difficult song to perform for me, and it was the most difficult song for me to sing actually, just to record the vocals. So I did all the vocals at home for the first time ever. I sang everything in the studio, but I ended up doing everything again at home.
Yeah,
and it took me ages to get that vocal right, because it was my brother died, and when I got home, I wrote that piece of music. That was my response to it, and then I struggled for a long time to find the right set of words to that weren't too overwrought, but that actually had enough kind of gravitas in it to express what I really felt. But it's difficult, and it's not the sort of thing you think about. What will I do when this happens? You never really, you shouldn't really think about it, because otherwise your response wouldn't be honest. And but it was a shock. I wasn't expecting him to die, and it was a real, much more of a shock than I thought it would be, actually. More of a shock than my mum and dad dying, funny enough. Not funny enough, because he was just closer to me.
Yeah.
In many ways, in an age. So yeah, I wanted to sort of do it justice. I wanted to create a song that I thought he would like.
Yeah. But
yeah, it helped me singing that song through the touring period, through 2022 and 2023. I kind of came to terms with it every night, And Simon's brother died as well. One of his older brothers died. So people throw the word cathartic around a lot and meaninglessly, but it was, particularly in the initial phases, it was really good. And I say that it was really good. It made me feel better about things, and also connected with a lot of people. Because our generation who've grown up with us are experiencing the same things. Yeah. People are experiencing it all the time. It's silly really to for me to fixate on it, because it's like nothing unusual. But I suppose that's the point. I'm trying to the art, I think, of writing a good song is taking something that's personal and making it universal and like, appealing to people. Sometimes it's trite, you know, and it's then I suppose the art of it is to kind of is to push through that, you know. So my initial versions of that song were really, you know, just awful, too raw and just too woe is me, I suppose. And that's always the problem I think you have with expressing grief in, like, creatively, is that the reality of it is that like that person has died, and you're left behind, and you're like, but everything's kind of centered around you, and yet it's that person that's died. And it always, when you see it happening to other people, again, it's one of those things you think, oh, come on, you know, you're still here. And there's always that, like, you know, get hold of yourself kind of thing. But when you're in the midst of it and it's happening to you, it's very difficult to see that light, you know. You're just like, it's a crushing kind of sense. And it's essentially to do with your own mortality. I mean, obviously, it's like, if your brother dies, it's like, oh, it's very close to home. But it's also, it's something's been torn away from you. Something's been torn out of your life. And however much you think about it, the reality of death is a difficult thing to cope with. You know, being with someone when they die is a difficult experience. And I struggled with the idea of it being something that I should write a song about, if I'm honest.
But that was your natural response, right?
The music was.
Yeah.
But the words were just an outpouring of just like, you know, because I just do that anyway, because it's easier than, you know, it's either that or I walk outside and shout. But yeah, I just, you know, I struggled for a while to accept that I should turn it into a song. I know of other people that have expressed these reservations as well about writing about things which are, you know, there's a trade-off between you memorialising someone or something and accepting what's happened and being able to, and dealing with it, I suppose, in some way, and trivialising it. And it's actually quite difficult to, you know, it's just suddenly it's like there, it's just a song, you know, it just turns into a song. But going out on stage and singing it every night, it was very much like it was the first time I was singing it. And so I kept that part of, you know, I treated it on stage as something very different to the rest of the show.
Quite separate in a way.
And the band always felt that as well.
Yeah,
Everyone was like, the mood of the band is often quite, on stage, you know, things go on and it's like you look at each other and stuff goes on, and you know, it's not playful exactly, but there's an undercurrent sometimes of, you know, things that you've seen or like, or what's something that's just happened and no one else is noticing. The mood would change for that song.
Right.
It would become very, very serious, very somber, whatever else was going on. Just for that sort of 6 or 7 minutes, it would be a very sort of somber, dramatic kind of.
That's I Can Never Say Goodbye from the new Cure album, Songs for a Lost World. Do you think like everyone in the band's listening to the words as well and sort of like focusing on, you know, how to make sure that, I mean, because, you know, the words are so open and, you know, so beautiful.
Well, they don't.
I mean, not in trepidation. I mean, just like, but kind of like just making sure that it, you know, just comes across, for you.
Yeah, everyone listens to me on stage apart from Simon.
Of course.
Simon runs about. So Simon hears me by default because he's hearing everyone else. I mean, half the band wear in ears and half the band are on monitors. So there's enough of me there in the air.
Okay.
To, you know, but yeah, the band responds to. I mean, but I sing in rehearsals. Do that. I mean, I'll say to them, look, this is the bit where you got, you know. So you don't have to listen to like every, you know, verse 2. But honestly, when I get to the, like, you know, I mean, I'm saying this, if I'm thinking about like Friday, when we did Friday, I'm in Love, it's Troxy, and I went horribly wrong. But it's like, I thought we were so close that I just relaxed ever so slightly, and it all went.
Everyone loves that though, don't they? When something goes a bit wrong, everyone in the audience.
But that was a good example of like, so half the band followed, like watching the stream. That's really interesting because half the band follows what I'm singing, and the other half of the band just carry on playing the song, thinking, an idiot, he's gone wrong, you know. So if you watch very carefully, you can see who's listening to me and who isn't. But yeah, ultimately I prevail because I'm just thinking like, you can't really stop singing. Like, I've reached the middle 8. You have to catch up. So the others know that the response, you know, the emotional response that you get with a song. I mean, a lot of it. I mean, instrumental music creates an emotional response, a very strong emotional response. In fact, my preferred music is instrumental music. But I also know that for whatever reason, when I sing, people people connect with it. And it's one of those things, I have no idea why, and I don't think any singer does. Like, lots of people sing, most people can sing. You know, not many people want to get up in front of people and sing. I didn't ever want to get up in front of people and sing. I was horrified when I ended up as the singer. You know, I honestly, it's like at school, I never did anything on stage. I was always doing wardrobe stuff. You know, the last thing in the world I wanted was to get on stage. And even when we did our first shows, I sang one song at our first show, just to see what it felt like. And I sang the wrong song. You know, and I played, we were doing covers, I played and sang Suffragette City, and everyone else was doing Foxy Lady. And I was so drunk, I didn't even know. It's like, I thought that was good. You know, and it was like, you played the wrong song. I never felt like I was cut out to be a singer, and I kind of just grew into it because I fell out with everyone else that sort of occupied that position until I became the de facto singer. You know, it's like, and I was all, you know, that's why the early albums, the early mixes, I'm really low down in the mix, almost, you know, because I was unsure about what I was doing and I didn't have the right kind of mental, I didn't have the big enough ego, actually, looking back, to be a singer. It's you know, because you do have to like think like, oh, you walk out on stage, and I mean, I've kind of developed it, I've grown into it, but there's always a part of me which is like wonders, you know, when I'm walking up onto a stage, like, really? I mean, I still honestly think that. Like, what am I doing? So it's not a question of being shy. I've never been shy, but I've never been extrovert. And to be a singer, there has to be a part of you which really wants, you know, craves attention. And it's lovely when it works. But when I started singing, I didn't think that anyone would like what I sounded like. I didn't. And so I thought, well, no one else is going to. And so I thought, well, this is going to be a really short career until we find someone who can sing. So I sang the first album, and then discovered that people liked what I was doing, and as it develops and people becoming, you know, they feel like they start to know you, and like if you're writing like relatable words, and people feel like you're singing with honesty, and then you become part of their lives, and ultimately you know your voice actually resonates with people in a way that another instrument doesn't. So the band knows that. They know that if I'm singing well to an audience, it's an extra thing, you know. It's like, so the instrumental build up in the songs, it's not like you're waiting for me to start singing, but the singing bit comes and it's adding to what we've already created. So it's like, they listen, but some listen more than others.
I mean, everyone has been saying, you know, that your voice has never sounded better.
I have no idea how this is possible. It's just genes. I mean, my dad was singing until he was into his 90s.
But it's nuts, isn't it? Because like lots of singers, you know, lose their voice quite early on, and some. I mean, I
was getting asked like, what do you do to keep your voice in such good nick and stuff? I said, like, I have pretty much done everything I can to have killed myself in the last 50 years. So, like, keeping my voice in good nick has really been low down on my list of priorities. So, I honestly, it's just genetics. It's it's as simple as that. I mean, I don't do anything. I mean, I try. I mean, I don't live the same life as I did when I was 20 years ago. But I never worried about not being able to sing. I've never had to drop a song in key and things like that, but at some point I will. I mean, it's not, you know,
that's okay.
It's not something mystical. It is gonna happen. But I'm just lucky, I suppose, that it's I gave up smoking quite a long time ago. I think that's probably the reason why. I think that's what, I mean, I was going to say it's what kills you. I mean, it does, but it also kills your voice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So clean living and religion.
Well, of course, of course. Let's play the next song. This is called All I Ever Am. All I Ever Am.
To me, but lyrically, it's one slightly different to the rest of the songs. It was the most difficult. So I can never say goodbye was difficult because I wanted it to have a certain tone, and I found it really, really difficult to get the right tone that I was going to sing, and for it to be honest and for it to be plaintive enough to come across as being real. And All I Ever Am was such a contrived subject in a way, and so kind of like up its own arse that I was worried that I was writing a song about something which was, on the one hand, so patently obvious, and on the other hand, like something that you shouldn't even really be bothered thinking about. And yet, like reams and reams of books have been written about the subject of the persistence of consciousness and so forth. And in a period of my life, I was really intrigued by it, by how we are like the sum of who we were, kind of thing, and all that sort of stuff. And whether we're aware of it, or whether there is a persistence of consciousness, or whether am I the same person, or you know, not just in a literal sense, not in a physical sense, but like emotionally and mentally. I think, well, of course not, because you change, but then it leads you to, it's like, how much do you change? You know, like your formative part of your life is essentially, you know, when you're like 3 years old to kind of, you know, certain, depending on who you believe, like sort of 3 till 7, but I think it goes further on. And I really think, you know, right the way through until you're in your like early 20s, you're not really you. I don't think you don't really become. And yet there is when you look back, there is a certain part of your life, certain parts of your life which feel much more you than anything that follows. It's a strange. It's that really that it doesn't bother me. I don't sort of wander around, like, agonising over it, but from time to time I think, like, I do something or I say something, I think that wasn't me, and everyone does it. It's like people will say to you, that doesn't sound like you, and you think, like, what does that mean? How do you mean it doesn't sound like me? And it's like, so it's like, and it's also, I suppose there's an element to it as well, which is because of what I do, because I do feel like I present myself and there's a public face to me, which is kind of odd. Most people don't do that. They don't have a performing side to them. They don't, you know, certainly don't, you know, wear makeup, go on stage and sing.
It makes me think of your videos now, though, and sort of like, you know, getting into you know, in the 80s, getting into like characters.
Yeah. I mean,
because part of it is you want to mess around because you don't take it as seriously as, you know, as maybe others do, or something like that. Or
there's also a part of it where people say, like, why do you wear makeup? And I say, well, because when I put my makeup on, I still do. I feel like I'm about to do something which is like not normal, which is like not necessarily abnormal, but if there was another word for not normal, out of the ordinary, and not really part of who I am. You know? And so it's like, but it's like thousands of years old. You go out on a stage and you try to, like, you're enhancing your features, or you're creating some kind of mask, or you're doing, you know, it's something, it's theatrical, it's a performance. And it's that side of it as well, which that feeds into the song, like All I Ever Am, because it's like I say about the empty stage and stuff. It is a much bigger part of my life than I realised it was.
Right.
Performing is actually become something which is integral to who I am as an older man. And it's odd, because I didn't even really think about it. It just sort of happened. And I'm thinking, like, when did this happen? So it's that kind of self-reflection, but again, like I said, there's a danger of it becoming like, it's like it's solipsistic. It's like, you know, like here I am, like worrying about it. It's just like, and the world's on fire, you know, it almost doesn't matter. And yet it kind of does, because it informs everything you do, everything you say, everything you know, all your actions are informed by, like, what your sense of right and wrong. And it's really all tied in with that sense of identity. And so it's and I thought it would be interesting just to see if I could write a song about it without sounding sort of kind of, because I don't really know that I reach a conclusion in it at all. I have no idea, really. It was almost, I had even when I was writing it, I had to keep rereading it because I've got like double negatives in it. That sort of, I was thinking, this doesn't make any sense. And I'm still not sure if it does. So it was an interesting thing to write about. And I thought I just needed a couple of songs. I'm wary of when I do this, though, because I've done it before and write songs about subjects that interest me, and they often turn out, they're so, I think that's really good, and it's like very well constructed and so forth, blah, 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 but it doesn't engage with people.
Right.
And the songs very quickly drop out of a set list, and people, they're no one's favourite songs. And I thought, I don't really want that song, you know, on the album. But again, I managed to get it to a point where it kind of sets you up for the end song, because it's like me struggling with who I am, and which is essentially what Endsong is all about. So I said Endsong is a kind of an emotional response to the feeling of growing old. All I Ever Am is an emotional response to the idea of being young. It's kind of like the flip side of it.
Here's the 10th and final track on Songs of a Lost World, the epic Endsong. I felt with Endsong, you know, what happened to that boy, you know, it was thinking about, you know, three imaginary boys, boys don't cry. It's that, right?
Yeah, and it's weird playing, like, we finished the show with Boys Don't Cry. I mean, it's almost become like, you know, we sort of do it. And I still think when I'm singing it, I still think that's me here, going back to it. I can still feel myself in that song. It's like, so it's almost like, I mean, not just music, but art in general, like, it has that power to kind of pull you out of yourself and to take you into other places. And when you're when you're actually singing and you feel that happening, it's like just on a really selfish level, it's a great feeling because I think I'm getting away with this. You know? But Endsong is really because we recorded in 2019. It was the 50th anniversary of the moon landing, and which I was obsessed with as a kid. You know, I wanted to be an astronaut. I wanted to be a footballer, but then I wanted to be. If I couldn't do that, I wanted to be an astronaut. I thought it was kind of like, well, if I fail at football, I'll be an astronaut because that's the way it looked like the world was going. You know, how wrong was I? But I remember like standing outside with all the family, like looking at my dad saying, "Yeah, they'll be walking on the moon," and I can remember my feeling of utter disbelief, you know, thinking like that it's not, you know, and being left alone in the garden, looking at it, thinking like, you know, a very early conspiracist, and seeing it on the telly, seeing all that, like the grainy black and white images and stuff, and it's represented so much that the moon landing. It was like an incredible event. And the sense of sort of optimism about everything, the possibilities were immense. I used to look up at the sky and thinking, I'm going to go to the moon. I've often written that line in different forms, and it represented the desire to do, just like do whatever you wanted, kind of like, follow your dreams.
Yeah.
But it was real, it was a real possibility that I was going to grow up and be an astronaut. It wasn't just like a pipe dream. I thought, my daddy said, well, you have to do science, and it was a dead serious kind of like, but it didn't work out. Although I have been to the moon several times.
Yeah, me too.
When we were recording in 2019, the album, the working title was Live from the Moon, and we recreated 1969 in the studio. So there was no modern technology allowed in the studio, and we had all 1969 stuff, magazines and newspapers and toys and board games and Apollo board game, fantastic game. Particularly with a few pints of Welsh beer in it. Yeah. So, how have we not played this more in the last 50 years? So yeah, it was for a month we just created that sort of vibe of which is why it was Songs of Lost World. Because when I left the studio, I felt like I realised that world, the world that we'd created in Rockfield no longer existed, and the world that actually I was celebrating no longer existed. And it was again the persistence of the world itself. You're thinking like everything's the same, but it isn't. It's just like it's a strange feeling. I mean, because our timescales are so tiny. Ever since the moon landing, I've had a telescope, and so I'm kind of I love nothing more than just like spending a few hours just staring at the space. It does give you a sense of perspective, and the timescales that we work to and that everyone is obsessed by become. I don't own a lot of technology for that reason, because I find it really, really irritating, because it drags me back into a world that I don't really want to be in. So I've never owned a smartphone, for example, because I can't really be bothered with it. I thought I lived for quite a long time without a smartphone, so I don't really see why I need one. And I don't have an assistant who has one either before it's unnecessary, and it kind of like I feel like it's a step too far for me just personally, and I like to, so in some ways I've sort of stopped at a certain point. I've chosen to stop at a certain point, and I've kind of disengaged with the modern world to a degree. Although I am Luddite actually in the truest sense, because I despair at the blindness of walking into an AI world. It's just like, it drives me crazy. But I've always been kept abreast of technology, but I've never really been seduced by it. So I understand how it all works, but to me, when people talk about sexy tech, God, there's nothing worse. I think it's like, yeah. So I suppose that's informed a lot of what we've done over the years as well, and particularly with this album, I think it's come to like a point where I've actually wanted the band to create something which celebrates a world which sadly is no longer there, but without becoming too sort of, like I said earlier, too maudlin about it and too morose. But I'm glad that I think I've experienced a better world than the youngsters that I know. Right. I think it was a lot easier and a lot brighter. But then you just sound like your dad. It was better. Well,
there is that.
My dad never said that, because he went through a world war. So he never used that line on me, because he had to go away and fight for 5 years. So the world he grew up in wasn't the best of all possible worlds. So he used to say to me, "You're living in the best of all possible worlds." So, and I believed him, and I think he was probably right.
I think so too. Thanks, Robert. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
Thanks to Robert Smith for joining me on this episode of my listening party to tell me all about the new Cure album, Songs of a Lost World, which is out now.
And don't forget, Cure's Songs of a Live World, an incredible set recorded at Troxy in London, is out on December 13th, and all the royalties from the album go to War Child.